Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, we're going to look at my Phalaenopsis orchid. This one is called Phalaenopsis Kaoda Twinkle Chocolate Drops. This is a grocery store Phalaenopsis for me because I got it at my local Trader Joe's. It's been a little bit over a year since I have had this orchid, but it has already bloomed twice, including the flowers that I from when I took it home from the grocery store. Here's the clip of this orchid right after I purchased it. At the time, it was okay, but I can tell you, out of all the Kaoda Twinkles available at the store, I went through every single one of them, and this one was the healthiest one. And how I determine whether an orchid is healthiest from amongst the bunch is I typically go for the orchid with more leaves, and the leaves should be bigger, right? The bigger the leaves, the better. So the number of leaves, the size of the leaves, but then also whether the root system is more substantial compared to the other same kind of orchid. Like this one, it was growing out of the hole, the ventilation hole, and if you look at the top of the surface, lots of roots, and they're really thick, and I even kind of used my finger and touched on the roots. They're pretty firm, so I know that they are all viable roots. And this one had the most leaves out of the bunch that I could see, so I decided to pick this one up. Another reason I bought a Kaoda Twinkle was because, well, it's at a grocery store, so the price was really, really reasonable. It was very inexpensive. I think I only paid either $7.99 or $8.99 for this mid-size orchid, which, you can't beat that, especially if their flower can last for a month and a half, 2 months, if I remember correctly. That's like less than $5 a month, and you get to enjoy the orchid for such a long time. So at a first glance, right, initially people may think that orchids are expensive, but I can tell you personally, I think orchids are much more inexpensive than cut flowers, like a bouquet flowers. Although bouquets are also really pretty, but I prefer orchid because of its longevity. Or shelf life, longer expiration dates. The only downside of this orchid is it doesn't have a fragrance. My friend's Kaoda Twinkle is allegedly fragrant, and I have seen some video footage of other people's Kaoda Twinkle being described as fragrant. So either this one has genetic defect, or it's just not the kind of cross of Kaoda Twinkle that would have fragrance. Maybe that's why that's how it ended up at a grocery store. Who knows? Now let's fast forward. This is where I started to observe that it was producing a primary flower spike. At the time, it was shooting out the flower spike to the side, and then I had to switch its position so that I could gradually train this orchid to have a flower spike toward the window. And this is, you see how the flower spike kind of turned almost a 90 degree? That's because I switched this orchid 90 degree. Because I didn't want it to have a flower spike shooting a flower spike 180 degree to the side. Training flower spikes is it's not anything new to orchid growing. Some people train flower spikes with threads, with clips, with twist ties, and some people train flower spikes with sticks or bamboo sticks. And for me this year, I didn't actually train any of my flower spikes with any tools in particular. I mean, I should say most of my orchids, their flower spikes, I just kind of let them grow naturally. So however they want to shoot out, and then it all has that slightly pendant look to it. But this one, I did train it by only moving the position so that it would continue to grow toward the light sources. And that's how they do. What they do. They grow toward the light source. So if you just switch the position a little bit, it would start to grow in a different direction. And that's why if you're looking for that, if you're aiming for that cascade, very neat, tidy cascade looking flower spike, you have to make sure that you don't change the position or angle too much. But for me, I purposely wanted to turn 90 degree, and that's why I turn it 90 degree, because I want the flower spike to come out toward the sun, so that way they're more pleasant to look at, because the leaves are growing in the back, and I didn't want to have a flower spike that's shooting out to the side, and then when I want to look at the flower, but then the orchid leaves are not positioned in a very visually pleasant way. Now let me talk a little bit about the care I give to this orchid. In terms of watering, I usually wait for a week or so in summertime to give this orchid water, and it's usually about 2 weeks for the wet dry cycle to come to a full circle in the winter time. So 1 week in summertime, and usually it's about 2 weeks in the winter time. And I give this orchid quarter strength fertilizer pretty much every watering, except once a month, either beginning of the month or at the end of the month. I would just use pure water, nothing in it, just pure reverse osmosis water, and let it soak in that water for an hour, for example. And the purpose of that is to allow the media to soak and dissolve any salt buildup from the fertilizer, and then that's just an easier way to flush the media, so that the bark chip media can be cleaner than it is before. I didn't repot this orchid because I want this orchid to continue to get adjusted to my environment, and it's doing really well. And I think after the flower go away, I may repot this orchid. But overall, it's growing really well with lots of aerial roots, and that's a good sign. And even though this year it's only giving me 1 spike with 4 flowers, it's still a pretty good performer, because I haven't really given this orchid too much attention, and it still blooms. So I think this is a very hardy orchid to give it a try if you don't have one in your collection. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!